Ever get that feeling like the world is just one giant, I want, like everything is about craving, needing, wanting more?
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Well, that's kind of what we're diving into today. The philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, this guy who looked at desire straight on and, came back with some pretty intense ideas.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to get real about the dark side of wanting.
Our source for this deep dive is this YouTube video called, get this, The Desire to Have Never Been Born, from the channel Philosophy Coded. That title alone.
It kind of grabs you, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder what he's getting at. So for anyone who hasn't spent much time with Schopenhauer, what's the 2-minute version? What's his main thing?
Okay, so imagine this. Everything we do, from wanting that second cup of coffee to all of humanity striving and achieving, it's all driven by this one single force, like a cosmic, and he called it the will.
Okay, so not willpower, like I will go to the gym today, but something way bigger.
Way bigger, yeah. And a lot less, less cheerful, you could say. This will, it's not about reaching goals or being happy. It's this constant striving, this insatiable wanting. And that, according to Schopenhauer, is where all our suffering comes from.
Whoa. Okay, so instead of celebrating the human drive to achieve things, build things, he's saying it's the root of all our problems. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, he didn't hold back. And it gets even, trippier when you think about his idea of representation. So he believed that what we experience through our senses, it's not really the world as it truly is. It's more like a representation of it. And that representation is shaped by the will.
Hold on. So you're saying that my love for, let's say my love for collecting vintage sci-fi novels is just the will, pulling my strings?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what he's suggesting, that our whole, our sense of self, our desires, everything's all a manifestation of this, this cosmic will.
So I'm basically a puppet in a cosmic puppet show.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, I'll have to think about that one. But can we bring this back to everyday life? How does this will play out in in our regular experience?
Sure. Think about that feeling you get when you're scrolling through social media, right?
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. And you see everyone else seemingly living these amazing lives, and suddenly you're hit with this wave of wanting their experiences, their possessions, their apparent happiness.
Ugh, yeah, too real. So Schopenhauer is saying that feeling that I want, that seems so personal. It's actually the will driving all of us.
Exactly. And because the will is, by definition, insatiable,
yeah,
it never ends. We're always left wanting more, never truly satisfied.
So we're stuck on this treadmill of desire, always chasing but never quite reaching it.
Yeah, that's the dilemma he was exploring, which leads to that, pretty heavy question posed by the video title, the desire to have never been born. If all this is true, if life is just this constant striving and wanting and never quite getting there, wouldn't it be better to have just never existed at all?
Okay. Yeah, I'll admit I've had that thought cross my mind, especially after a particularly rough Monday morning. But isn't that kind of a paradox? I mean, you can't really want to not exist if you, don't exist.
You got it. That's exactly the heart of the issue.
Yeah.
The very act of wishing you weren't born, it means you exist. And according to Schopenhauer, it means that the will is active, working through you, even in that desire to not be.
Okay, so we're kind of trapped, right? Even the desire to escape is part of the trap.
In a way, yeah.
So what was his solution? Did he offer any way out of this whole cosmic treadmill of suffering, or are we just doomed to keep running?
Well, he did have a solution, but it wasn't exactly, a feel-good self-help strategy. Schopenhauer's answer, asceticism, complete and total denial of the will's desires.
Wait. So his big solution to the suffering of existence was to just give up on everything that makes life, interesting, fun.
Yeah, he was pretty serious about it. Think less, treat yourself, and more, renounce all worldly possessions and live as simply as possible.
Okay, so maybe not the most appealing option for most of us. Did he offer any alternatives, anything a little less, renunciatory?
He did. He acknowledged one other way to temporarily escape the will's grip: art.
Art. Okay, that's interesting. So even this deeply pessimistic philosopher saw value in creativity. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, he believed that in the moments of pure aesthetic contemplation, whether you're lost in a painting or a piece of music or even just a breathtaking view, we actually step outside the cycle of wanting, for a little while at least.
It's like when you get so absorbed in a movie, a really good movie, that you totally forget about your to-do list, your worries, even yourself for a while. Is that kind of what he meant?
Yeah, exactly. For Schopenhauer, art offered a glimpse of something beyond the will's constant striving. Not a permanent solution, of course, but a brief respite from the tyranny of desire.
Okay, so maybe there's hope for us art lovers after all. But it sounds like Schopenhauer was pretty convinced that suffering was just the, I don't know, the default setting of existence. Did any other thinkers like challenge that view? Was he just like out there on his own with this whole life is suffering thing?
Well, he wasn't completely alone. There was this other philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, who he was really influenced by Schopenhauer, but he took a kind of a different take on this whole will business, a little more I don't know, a little more energetic.
Okay, Nietzsche, always up for like shaking things up in the world of philosophy, right?
Yeah.
What was his take on all this?
So Nietzsche, he agreed that the will was like this fundamental force. But instead of seeing it as, something to be suppressed or denied, he thought we should harness it, even embrace it.
Okay, hold on. Embrace the thing that's like causing all our suffering? That seems, I don't know, kind of counterintuitive.
It does. But for Nietzsche, the will striving, even though it leads to pain and dissatisfaction, it's also like what pushes us to overcome challenges, to grow, to become stronger.
So it's like instead of trying to reach this like static state of happiness, the goal is to constantly be, pushing our boundaries, evolving, becoming something more.
Exactly. Yeah, Nietzsche saw suffering not as something to be like avoided at all costs, but as a necessary part of becoming who we're meant to be.
That's definitely a different way of looking at things. It's like he's saying, bring on the struggle because that's where the real growth happens.
Exactly. Yeah, he has this famous quote, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. It's pretty much, Nietzsche in a nutshell.
Okay, so we've got Schopenhauer over here, advocating for like extreme self-denial, and then we've got Nietzsche saying embrace the struggle. It's like two completely opposite approaches to life. I mean, how do you even begin to reconcile them?
It is. It's a real clash of, philosophical titans.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting is that they were both like wrestling with the same fundamental questions. Questions about desire, suffering, and the meaning of existence. And both of their perspectives, even though they're so different, they offer these valuable insights.
It's like they're each holding up a different lens, showing us a different facet of this whole human experience thing.
Exactly. And remember Schopenhauer's claim that our sense of self, like our I, is just an illusion, like a manifestation of the will.
Yeah, the whole cosmic puppet show idea, still a little mind-bending, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting to note that this idea of the illusory self, it isn't unique to Schopenhauer. It also pops up in Eastern philosophy, particularly Buddhism.
Oh, right. Buddhism. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about like no self or anatta. Right. How does that connect with what Schopenhauer was saying?
So they both see this individual ego, that feeling of I, as this temporary and ultimately like insubstantial thing. In Buddhism, this realization, it's seen as a key step on the path to enlightenment, to liberation from suffering.
So Schopenhauer's, pretty bleak worldview actually has some common ground with a tradition that's all about peace and compassion. So that's kind of unexpected.
It is. It's a reminder that even, philosophies that seem really different on the surface can sometimes, converge on these similar truths. Both Schopenhauer and Buddhism, they recognize that our attachment to this idea of a separate self, a fixed identity, that's a huge source of suffering.
Okay, but if we let go of the ego, the I, what's left? Are we just like empty vessels for the will to play with? Does anything meaningful remain?
That's a big question, right? And both Schopenhauer and Buddhism, they grapple with that. For Schopenhauer, the answer is, well, it's complex, but it involves like transcending the individual will through, aesthetic contemplation, through moments of pure experience, like we were talking about with art.
So art as a way to tap into something bigger than ourselves, something beyond that constant churn of desire.
Exactly. And for Buddhism, letting go of the ego, it leads to this deeper understanding of interconnectedness, this realization that our individual lives are part of something much vaster and more profound, something that goes beyond just, our little individual wants and needs.
So maybe letting go of the I, it isn't about annihilation, but about connecting with something greater. That's actually a pretty hopeful thought, even in the midst of all this talk about suffering and, cosmic forces and all that.
It is. It's kind of a paradoxical thing. And it brings us back to this question of how to reconcile the desire to escape suffering with this drive to find meaning and beauty in life. Both Schopenhauer and Buddhism, they suggest that true fulfillment, it comes from something beyond our individual desires and ego-driven pursuit.
And that's a message that seems to like resonate throughout history, right? I mean, didn't the YouTube video we're looking at, didn't it mention how this yearning for non-existence, this questioning of life itself, it pops up again and again in art and literature?
It does. Yeah, the video, it quotes this ancient Greek playwright, Sophocles. He said, "Not to be born is beyond all estimation best, but when a man has seen the light of day, this is next best by far, that with utmost speed he should go back from where he came."
Whoa. Okay. That's pretty dark. Even for Sophocles. But it does speak to this like universal human experience, right? This feeling that maybe life is like inherently flawed. Maybe we'd all be better off if we'd, never been born.
It's a sentiment that you see, throughout history, from ancient tragedy to modern existentialist literature.
Yeah.
And it suggests that this questioning of our very existence, this longing for something beyond the pain and struggle of life, it's like a fundamental part of being human.
But even in the face of all that, that existential angst, humans, we keep creating, right? We keep searching for meaning. We keep trying to make sense of it all. It's like we're, hardwired to seek out beauty and connection, even in the midst of suffering.
And that's where things get really interesting, because even modern neuroscience, a field that Schopenhauer could never have even imagined, is starting to offer some insights into why we might feel this way, why we have this existential angst.
Okay, neuroscience and existential angst. That's a connection I wouldn't have expected. Tell me more.
Well, there's growing evidence that our capacity for existential dread, our feelings of anxiety and unease, even our sense of meaninglessness, it might be linked to our brain's evolution, like how our brains developed over time.
So you're saying that feeling like life is a bit of a cosmic joke, that's just a side effect of having a highly evolved brain?
It's a simplification, but yeah, essentially. Our brains are incredibly complex.
Right.
And they've evolved over millions of years to help us survive. But sometimes that survival instinct, that heightened awareness of our own mortality, it can manifest as anxiety, fear, and even a sense of cosmic isolation.
So our existential angst, it might just be a biological quirk, like a glitch in the system?
Not necessarily. Neuroscience, it offers one perspective on the human experience, but it doesn't negate the philosophical questions that Schopenhauer and others have raised. It's like science can tell us about the mechanics of suffering, but it's philosophy that helps us, grapple with its meaning, what it all means.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin, each illuminating a different aspect of the same complex reality.
Exactly. And by bringing those perspectives together, we can gain this richer, more nuanced understanding of the human condition. We can appreciate the biological underpinnings of our experience while still, exploring the deeper existential questions that drive us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? Schopenhauer's, pessimistic view of the will, Nietzsche's call to embrace the struggle, the echoes of these ideas in Buddhism and ancient Greek tragedy. We even threw in a bit of neuroscience, for good measure. It's amazing how all these threads they weave together, don't they?
It is. It's a testament to the enduring power of these questions, these fundamental human concerns about, desire, suffering, and the meaning of existence.
It's like Schopenhauer's philosophy, it offers a framework for understanding not just our individual struggles, but the broader human experience, this shared journey of grappling with the complexities of existence.
That's a great point. And it brings us back to that central question.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile this desire to escape suffering with this drive to find meaning and beauty in life? How do we navigate this world that often feels so indifferent to our pain and longing?
It's a question that each of us has to answer for ourselves, but exploring the ideas of thinkers like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and the Buddhist tradition, it can offer some valuable insights along the way. It's like they're handing us different tools, different lenses to help us make sense of this strange and beautiful and sometimes heartbreaking journey we call life.
Beautifully put. And the YouTube video we're exploring, it does a fantastic job of bringing all these threads together, showing how Schopenhauer's ideas, even though they were formed, centuries ago, they still speak to the core of the human experience.
Okay, so we've delved into the depths of Schopenhauer's pessimism, explored the counterpoint of Nietzsche's embrace of the struggle, touched on Buddhism and ancient Greek tragedy. We even dipped our toes into the world of neuroscience. What else is there to unpack in this fascinating YouTube video?
It's interesting to think about Schopenhauer's, love for art.
Yeah, you wouldn't really expect it from someone with, such a bleak outlook on life.
Right. You'd think he'd just be all doom and gloom all the time. But
Yeah.
It kind of shows you how complex his thinking was.
Yeah, I guess even someone who believed that, suffering was just part of being human could still find moments of beauty and even transcendence.
Exactly. And the video does a good job of highlighting how this idea, this, tension between suffering and the desire for something more, how that's like woven into art itself.
It's like that yearning we've been talking about, that feeling of wanting to escape the pain of existence. It finds expression in art.
It really does.
Yeah.
Think about the tragic heroes in, Greek mythology, Shakespearean dramas even, the melancholic beauty of some of Beethoven's music.
It's all there, isn't it? This grappling with these big questions, this search for meaning in a world that often feels pretty chaotic.
Yeah, and what's funny is that Schopenhauer's own life kind of mirrored some of those themes.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, he faced a lot of rejection early in his career. His work was largely ignored by the academic establishment.
So even though he was wrestling with these really profound philosophical questions, he wasn't exactly a superstar in his own time.
Not at all. Yeah. But eventually, his ideas started to gain some traction, particularly among artists and writers who really resonated with his assessment of the human condition.
It's kind of funny how sometimes the most groundbreaking ideas, they take a while to catch on.
It's like people need time to adjust to a new way of seeing the world.
Yeah. And Schopenhauer's persistence, it's a good reminder that even when you face adversity, even when it feels like no one's listening, it's important to stay true to your own ideas, to keep exploring and keep questioning.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I think that's the legacy he left behind, this invitation to really delve into the depths of human experience, to confront the difficult questions and to find our own, paths to meaning, even in the midst of suffering.
It's like he was saying, hey, life is tough, but let's not pretend it's not. Let's really look at it, understand it, and see what we can learn from it.
Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, in that process of exploration, we'll discover something beautiful, something that makes the struggle worthwhile.
So what's the big takeaway here? How do we take Schopenhauer's, pessimism and reconcile that with this drive to find meaning and beauty in our own life?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
There's no easy answer, but I think Schopenhauer would encourage us to embrace the complexity, to acknowledge the darkness without, giving into despair.
To find those moments of transcendence, whether it's through art or nature or human connection or just, the quiet contemplation of existence itself.
Yeah, and to remember that even in a world that seems to be governed by this blind striving, there's still room for individual choice, for creative expression, for moments of genuine connection and joy.
It's like he's giving us a map to some pretty challenging terrain, but he's also giving us the tools to navigate it, to find our own way through the tangled forest of existence.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to put it, and that's the beauty of philosophy, isn't it? It doesn't offer easy answers, but it gives us the power to ask better questions, to engage with the world in a more thoughtful and nuanced way.
And ultimately to find our own, meaning, our own purpose, even in a universe that might seem indifferent to our existence.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
So to sum it all up, Schopenhauer might have been a bit of a downer at times, but he also offered this really powerful reminder that even when things are tough, even when the desire to just, not exist creeps in, there's still beauty to be found, there's meaning to be created, and there are connections to be made.
And that's a message worth holding on to.
Absolutely. And that wraps up our deep dive into the mind of Arthur Schopenhauer. We covered a lot of ground today, from the will and the desire to have never been born to the power of art and the surprising relevance of Schopenhauer's ideas to our modern world. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for more fascinating journeys into the world of ideas.